I would say don't just do it for the money. Like one, even though obviously this is a business and we do want to be profitable and we do want to generate enough revenue to where, we can pay each other salaries and we can, grow monetarily. Don't just do it for the money, because then you'll find yourself in constantly wanting to pivot, wanting to make a quick buck here and there. And if you don't have a North Star, which for our North Star, it is very much rooted in family, then it's easy to get swayed by just opportunities.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Shadi Atassi, and that's as close as I'm getting to pronouncing it right.
Great.
But Shadi started his journey growing up in Miami, and then went off to Washington, D.C., went to George Mason University and studied global affairs, as well as played soccer, and then moved to Colombia to play soccer full time. Had an idea of bringing some South American drinks and to replace coffee into the U.S., and then started that business in about 2020 and started developing some new drinks as well, and has expanded the product line and done some interesting things there. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Shadi.
Thanks so much, Devin. Yeah, that's a great summary, and you nailed my name.
Awesome.
Congrats.
Well, that's as close as I'm going to get. So now I gave a much more or a condensed version to a much longer journey. So why don't we rewind and unpack that a bit? Tell us a little bit about how your journey got started up growing up in Miami.
Yeah, so I grew up in Miami. I was born to a Syrian dad. That's where my name comes from, and an Argentine mom. My dad was born in Syria, but he moved to Argentina when he was 1 year old. So, the household was very much an Argentinian household, and living in Miami, it's very Latino based. And then when I was 18, I moved to George Mason because I was playing soccer at the time. My intentions were to go play professionally. And so I played a year in George Mason, then I moved to Argentina, then I moved to Colombia, Spain, and kind of started getting involved with just kind of entrepreneurship in general. I always felt like it was a really fun category to be in. And I just started diving into different things. I realized in Argentina that there was this tea called the yerba mate that I kind of knew of growing up because it was, a household thing. But it wasn't until I moved to Argentina that I really realized, like,
No, let me ask or maybe a couple follow-up questions, because I think you, if I remember right, and definitely correct me if I'm wrong, you moved off or went off to George Mason, started playing soccer and studying there. Now, did you finish or partway through you decide you wanted to go to Colombia and play soccer full time, or kind of walk us through that a bit?
yeah. So my first year I did it physically in George Mason. And then that summer after my first year, I got the opportunity to go to Argentina, and I talked to the school. I talked to George Mason. I told them kind of the ideas that I had, and they had helped me out a ton in continuing my career online. So the next 3 years, I actually did it mostly online. And when I was in here, like back in Miami for the summer, I would do summer courses here. So I ended up graduating 4 years with the same people in my class. And it was funny because I graduated in 4 years and they hadn't seen me for 3 of those 4 years. So it was like it was a weird graduation, definitely.
So no, it makes sense, and sounds like you set it up for being a great opportunity. So
Yeah.
you go off to Colombia, and you said, okay, I'm gonna play soccer full time. Was the intent to kind of go professional and make that a lifestyle, or kind of walk us through as you made that jump over to moving out there and studying while you're doing soccer, kind of what the plan was?
Yeah, so I moved to Argentina first, and the idea was always I was 19 at the time. The idea was always like I wanted to play pro at all costs. And in Argentina, I had a good opportunity to play for a youth team, a pretty big youth team there. So I kind of developed my career there. I wasn't playing professional in Argentina, so I wasn't getting paid. It was youth.
Hmm.
And then I got the opportunity to go to Colombia. I stayed there for a bit, and once I was in Colombia and then moved back to the US is when I actually signed my first professional contract. I was actually getting paid, and then that's when I moved to Spain. And in Spain, the next 3 years were professional as well. But in those 3 years is when I developed this brand that is now, a company, that kind of got stemmed in Argentina through my love of yerba mate and just these teas in general.
Now, just as you're doing that, so you're doing soccer for a large period of time now, as you kind of got to saying, hey, there's this interesting drink, not really, well known in the US or in other parts of the country or of the world, and so I'm going to take that opportunity in order to kind of build it out or make a business out of it. And as you're doing that, was that kind of on the tail end of, hey, decided soccer isn't going to be the full-time gig that you intended, or was that more of, hey, we're going to do this full-time and then start out as a side hustle? Or kind of walk us through how you transition from soccer to being in the drink industry and the beverage industry.
Yeah, so a lot of people, a lot of athletes would probably agree with me that the athlete has a lot of downtime. Like you train in the morning, you probably get your workout in the afternoon, and then there's several hours in the day where you have a lot of downtime. So a lot of people actually do have like a side gig, or they do have something that they're working on. And when I was 18, 19, I started realizing this is a cultural, super culturally important tea. And for those who don't know, this is actually how we drink yerba mate. So you drink it in a gourd, you add the tea leaves, and then you just pour hot water and you sip. So this tea is consumed 10 to 1 to coffee in countries like Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, or Uruguay. So it was a huge thing in southern cone of South America, and it wasn't a thing in most other countries in the world, like you said. So my idea was like, okay, let's actually try to expand this tea, have it be something that's known to the average American. And then I started reading up on different companies here in the US that had already kind of done things like this. Guayaki is a great example of a very big yerba mate brand based out of the US. And so that's kind of where it stemmed. But my idea was always like, I'm just going to have it as a side gig. And then as the year started passing and we started realizing, oh, there's actually a market for this. People actually like what we're doing. In late 2021 is when I realized I either stop doing milonga and just focus 100% on soccer, because I can't scale a business when it's just a side gig, or I go back to the US and really dedicate myself full time to this. And that's kind of what I did. So since the January of 22 is when we started developing what is now the drinks, which are these yerba mate ready to drink cans. So we sell like loose leaf and then the actual drink as well.
So now you say, okay, it's kind of hard to balance those full time. You say this is a good opportunity. This drink is consumed throughout a lot of the world and not in some of the different countries. I'm gonna, bring it in or make it a thing there. So now as you did that, what time frame was that, or when did you start kind of focusing on that full time?
Yeah, so we launched the actual like loose leaf tea brand dead in the middle of COVID. It was May 2020, and obviously COVID was terrible for a lot of different reasons that we already know. But for the company and for me individually, it got me a chance to go back to the US because I was playing professionally in Spain. And obviously once COVID hit, Spain was one of the worst countries in the world that got hit for it. So, the president of the team at the time said, go back to your home. We'll let you know when to come back. And it was supposed to be 2 weeks, and ended up being like 6 months, obviously. And in that time frame that in US is when I really went like knee deep into like the development of this brand. And so May 2020 is when we launched it, and it wasn't until December 2021 that I realized, okay, let's actually do a product that is much more appealing to the American audience, being the cans. And let's really look into different ways of doing this. So I don't know if I mentioned, but these are cannabis infused beverages. This contains THC and CBD, and I'm sure we'll dive into that later. But this is kind of like a different development to what's already seen on the market today.
So now you say, okay, I'm gonna kind of dive in, have that opportunity. Hey, maybe I'll go back to doing soccer, which didn't necessarily work out. Sounds like maybe for the better. And so you go down that road. And so now, as you're initially starting out kind of with the first drink, how did you go about breaking into the market? There's a difference between, hey, this is a popular drink in other countries or a good portion around the world, versus bringing it into a place where people really aren't as familiar with it or necessarily having to try it as much. So kind of what was the plan there? Kind of how did you go about bringing it into the market?
Yeah, so my decision was very much based on, it was a very curated and thought out decision. I was playing professional in soccer and I was feeling like, I was enjoying my time there. It was a great environment. Obviously, I was doing what I loved, but it got to a point where I really asked myself, once I retire from soccer, whether it be at 25 or 35, what do I want to do? And it's this. It's starting a company, it's really developing something. So I said, why wait until, an opportunity obviously dies down, and I could play maybe the rest in the next 10, 15 years overseas and then come back and try to do this when I already have people interested in this and I have kind of a brand that I'm building. So my decision was much more based on um, saying, okay, let's go the other route. Even though I was enjoying soccer and I was, playing, once I came back is when I kind of changed chip and said, okay, let's put the entrepreneur hat on, just like the one you have on actually now. And really like focus in on this development. And once I got here is when I realized I learned a ton about entrepreneurship, starting your own business. I mean, this was very much me and my dad kind of figuring it out as we went. And my dad has his own job. So it was mostly me just figuring out, okay, what are steps to raise money? What are steps to manufacture? How do we get distribution? All these things that I didn't know anything about when I was living in Spain.
Hmm. So now you do that, and so you start to execute on that plan, start to, now did you see kind of immediate traction where people were interested and they started trying the drink out and it took off like a rocket ship, or was it more one that took a while to kind of find the market? Or are you still figuring that out, or about ready to close the doors, or about ready to retire? Kind of walk us through as you got into it, kind of how that progressed.
Yeah, so for a year and a half, we were developing this drink. So even though I came back in January of 2022, we launched these drinks 2.5 months ago, late July of 2023. So that whole period of a year and a half was very much like continuing to sell the loose leaf tea, but a main focus and most of my energy and time went into developing these drinks. Now that we launched these drinks, we are in a stage where we're seeing this take off very much. So we're seeing like a lot of different distribution partners are starting to get involved. We have a growing clientele here in Miami as well as in different parts of the country, but we're living that stage right now. Pre July 2023, it was very much development, grinding, and we're still in that phase. But now that we have an actual product, we have people drinking this and trying it, is when we feel like, okay, now we can grow. And it's not just a concept anymore, it's actually tangible. I was raising capital, we started raising capital January of this year, and we raised money based on the idea, because no one had ever even tried it. So that's kind of where we started realizing, okay, if people are invested in an idea, once they try this, we're going to grow exponentially. And that's kind of what we're seeing now. We're really excited about it.
No, sounds like it's been an awesome progression and a lot of opportunities. And so now you started to touch on, I think, as you brought the drink now and got it up and going and started in that. Now you've also expanded into some of the other drinks and additional beverages and kind of going down that route. So walk us through a little bit as to what that progression and expansion has been.
Yeah, so since day one, we always had this concept of like, let's go to market with something that's not common with regards to the caffeine, right? So we had seen that there was a couple yerba mate brands that were doing stuff here in the US. And obviously the alternative caffeine category is growing a ton. But we started realizing, internally, that the cannabis category is something that's super interesting to us. Obviously the whole CBD boom in 2018, and then the actual legalization of cannabis for a bunch of different states, we started realizing that most of it was not talked about before because of this taboo that obviously cannabis was prohibited for a really long time. So we use that as a challenge in saying, okay, let's develop something that does have cannabis, something that is different from what's in the market and is going to make people feel different. A lot of people are realizing that alcohol is just as bad or even worse than to cannabis. So we started realizing, okay, let's build something out that's healthy, that looks like it should be in Whole Foods. It should be in a lot of these healthy Trader Joe's type stores,
Mm.
but containing cannabis. There's not really any brands that are pushing for functional cannabis, for healthy drinks containing cannabis. So we saw a white space in the market and we said, let's attack that, face forward. And that's kind of the approach that we're doing now.
Awesome. So now as you've done that now, how has it been, pretty well accepted? Has it been one where it's, too early to tell, one where it's taken off, or kind of walk us through as you've gone about, kind of continuing to expand into those interesting drinks and offering a bit of a different approach and also tackling it head on? How's it gone for you?
Yeah, it's interesting, man, because there's still this taboo. Depending on who you speak to, people are going to be for it or against it. But we're realizing that there's certain pockets, certain niches of our audience, of our demographics that we're targeting. A lot of it has to do with Gen Z and millennials. A lot of it has to do with alcohol replacement. And we're starting to realize that this is much more interesting to the wider audience than we initially thought of. I mean, we have a great example I love to tell people is one of our early investors had never consumed cannabis in his life, was not ever against it, but he just wasn't really, involved in it. He's Latino as well.
Mm.
And when we launched the drinks, we gave him a can to try, and he was like, this was the most fun I've had in a while. I couldn't stop laughing the whole night. And so we're realizing even people who we thought were not going to be into this type of product are using this to replace alcohol. So we realized, okay, we do have something bigger than maybe we had thought initially. And that motivated us even more to say, okay, let's put this in the hands of people that we know are going to get into this. Like, I'll know, I mean, terms like early adopters, low hanging fruit, these type of people that we know are going to generate some really good return on investment in the beginning, in the first couple months, to get just some traction going.
No, it sounds like it's gone well so far, getting some traction, figuring things out, and definitely gone well. So sounds like an awesome place to be. So now as you're kind of getting into that place, so where do you kind of see the next 6 to 12 months headed for you, or kind of what's that next step for the business?
Yeah, that's a great question. The next 6 months, we're really trying to establish this brand in Miami. We're based out of Miami. I live here now, and we're realizing there's not really a category of cannabis beverages. It's funny because it's kind of hard to compare or even try to use KPIs on what this category is, because there's no Coca-Cola sized brand for cannabis beverages, because there are no big brands for cannabis beverages. Even the biggest ones are still, some of them are in the red, some of them are just, generating, breaking even. And so we're realizing we do have a really big white space and a really big opportunity here in Miami. So I would say, to answer your question, the next 6 months is very much putting a priority in Miami, as well as developing our distribution in Minnesota. We actually have our manufacturing facility in Minnesota. We are continuing to grow in Minnesota, as well as looking into the Northeast. Obviously, states like New York, New Jersey already consume alternative caffeine in several different form factors. So this is something that we could see, getting really into that area as well.
Awesome. Well, definitely sounds like some great opportunities ahead and some fun yet to come. So, well, now as we've kind of reached the present day of the journey and even looking a bit into the future of where things are headed, great time to transition to the two questions I always like to ask towards the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I always like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn from it?
Oh, that's a great question, man. Worst business decision we ever made was probably invest capital into marketing without really knowing exactly what our audience is. Like, we did a couple bad decisions in the beginning where we would put in a lot of capital to run like ads on social media or SEO, SEM, and all these things, and we weren't even sure what our audience was going to be. And we're at a stage where we're so young that before spending thousands of dollars into marketing money, we want to realize, who are we even marketing this to? Who do we want to hit first? Because there's so many different people different demographics that we can hit. And I guess our mistake was getting too excited about a product and not realizing, okay, what is this product going to go for? Who is going to be drinking this? And that's kind of something that we learned. I wouldn't say the hard way, because we didn't throw tens of thousands of dollars, but we definitely did learn our lessons. Yeah.
No, and I think that's easy. I mean, a lot of times you'll get pretty excited about the opportunities. Hey, marketing is can be great, and I think even more so, you kind of see, hey, everybody says that all you have to do is go and throw up some great Facebook ads or great,
Yeah.
Instagram ads or whatever, and you're just going to have more people that are going to be willing to buy your product than you know what to do with. And then you get into that and you find out, hey, we actually need to be, a bit more analytical about this, and who's our market and how do we advertise and how do we bring that message apart. So I think it's one where it's easy to get excited and to make that mistake, but also a great one to learn from.
Yeah, that's a great point, Devin. And I think that last thing you said, it's easy to get excited. That's the biggest thing. It's easy to get excited because you made something that people like. So there's not really a rule book on where to go, what to do once you have interest. And I think that's kind of the mistakes that it's normal to just fall into the trap of saying, oh, let's put this out there. Let's spend a bunch of money to get people to see this, and not strategically plan. I think like the actual planning of a product is essential more than the product in itself a lot of times.
Yep. No, I certainly agree with you there. So now the second question I'd like to ask is, so now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you give them?
That's a really good question as well. I would say don't just do it for the money. Like one, even though obviously this is a business and we do want to be profitable and we do want to generate enough revenue to where we can pay each other salaries and we can grow monetarily. Don't just do it for the money, because then you'll find yourself in constantly wanting to pivot, wanting to make a quick buck here and there. And if you don't have a North Star, which for our North Star, it is very much rooted in family, then it's easy to get swayed by just opportunities. And another thing I would really recommend, not only in the entrepreneur world, but in just the world in general, how it is right now, the biggest talent I see is being able to pivot with regards to what you thought you knew. Like today, with all these advances in AI, all these advances in just companies in general, it used to be that you could kind of depend on people above you, people that have done this before, to say, okay, if they've done it, then I can do it like this. But the reality is today, the world is so upside down with so many things that the quicker you can learn a new talent, especially at a young age, that's where I think we're going to start seeing like the actual development of really big companies, because it's that talent to pivot, to be able to say, okay, let's shift gears, that I think is like super, super valuable nowadays.
Absolutely. No, I think it's a great piece of advice and a great point. So, well, now as we do wrap up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah. So we have our website is up, but it's not able to purchase yet. It's kind of just a billboard right now, because like I said, we just launched a couple months ago. The website is www.milonga.life. And if people just want to hit us up on Instagram, I think that's the easiest way to get in touch with me and the rest of the marketing team. It's just milonga_yerba mate. And that's where we can chat. A lot of different people have been hitting us up and kind of even doing orders through there. And yeah, if they're ever in Miami, I'd love to I'd love to sit down and get some coffee or some mate and have them try it for sure.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage everybody to reach out, support a great business, and make a new connection. If nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So let's go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And on that note, if you ever need help with your startup, your small business with patents, trademarks, or anything else, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again for Shadi for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Yeah, thanks so much, Devin. I really appreciate it, and I really love what you're doing. Giving a voice to small companies and startups is is great and it's exciting. So I really applaud you and the rest of your team as well. Congrats.
Yep, our pleasure, and thanks for having us. Thanks for coming on.